Hey everyone, welcome back to Apollo Art Analysis. This episode we're to be studying a piece by the career 3D artist known as Christoph Gromer, and in this episode we're to be looking at the realism of the digital render, and we're also going to what it means to barely be able to keep your head above water. So let's jump right into it. So whenever you first see this work, of course, remember this lone subject set in center, kind of this shiny or metallic subject. Our first impression is one of shock or awe as you wonder what exactly we're looking at here. It's kind of a anxious or even unsettling sight. What you may notice, of course, the placement in center makes them quite hard to miss. We see form accented primarily through this silver light and dark accent there. What you may also notice is the impact of texture. We see this quite distinctly as we see a contrast between the kind of ill-defined and flowing form of the waves compared to the very rough and rigid metallic form of our subject here. Of course, both of which immerse us with the scene quite well. It feels incredibly realistic, of course, using the digital render. So it's quite interesting. In the impact of color, I would call this a monochromatic, but that's not true. We have this base blue, but upon that we have this rare hint of gold there. So even though it is, a bit rare and there is kind of a splash of gold, it is very important as well. It's not quite analogous. It's not a complementary scheme, but they do contrast each other. So it's going to draw our eye towards that gold, towards our subject's form, while also maintaining that base blue. So the impact of light here is also quite interesting. Of course, you see this everywhere from the reflection on the waves to the most prominent element of our subject's form in center there. It's quite interesting because all of these give us a sense of visual energy. So the original piece is actually a motion media piece. It is a GIF, but I just have a screenshot here to study. And it's quite interesting. You look at it, you see the visual energy, everywhere from the reflection of our subject's form to all the visual energy of the waves themselves. So there's really no doubt that the flow of this work is the most definitive element of this piece. We see the motion there quite easily. Even a still screenshot, you can see that it feels as if we're caught in midst of motion there. So that's incredibly important. With this in mind, how do you feel when you view this piece? What do you think we're looking at? Two, interesting questions to ask ourselves when we're looking at this work. So it's quite interesting. Our subject appears to be standing, barely being able to keep the head above water, but it's quite strange. We see kind of enduring this opposition or enduring that, trying not to drown, but it kind of has this almost stoic look, if you will. It's quite interesting. You can draw many metaphors from the scene everywhere from, literally trying to keep your head above water so you may not drown, all the way to the darker or more challenging times in life, both of which are very important, of course. You see a struggle amidst overwhelming opposition that just can't be understated within the work at hand. But regardless of that, the lone hero has to keep moving. When you're in your darker times at life, that's even more important why you must keep moving, so you can kind of get out of those darker times, so you can keep your head above water, so you do not drown, whether literally or metaphorically. So really stunning piece here. Of course, a lot of different metaphors you could draw from that. It is a kind of unsettling or anxious scene, as I mentioned. But you see, of course, the realism here, the digital rendering. I believe this was made in Cinema 4D, so you see just how realistic that is. The digital render, of course, is used in everything from, classic Pixar all the way to modern day with elements such as Beeple, Max Hay, Christoph Gromer, so many different people that use the digital rendering to use that incredibly realistic atmosphere and aesthetics. We see that here quite masterfully. So really hope y'all enjoyed today. So many different things we talked about, from the impact of, a hint of color, the impact of texture, to the kind of metaphoric things that you could draw from barely being able to keep your head above water. But regardless of that, I really hope y'all enjoyed today. I really hope y'all learned a bit. If y'all did, go check out the original artist Christoph Gromer doing some amazing stuff. Really works in that kind of crystalline aesthetic that reminds me a lot of Rim, the German artist, if y'all know who that is. But really hope y'all enjoyed today. Like I said, if y'all did, go check out the original artist Christoph Gromer, always doing some amazing stuff in the world of the digital rendering. My name is Apollo. This was Apollo Art Analysis, and I'll see y'all on the next episode. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to support our work directly, please check out our Apollo community tokens. Apollo Art Exchange is an ecosystem of art appreciation which elevates artists each and every day. Thanks for listening.